Hi, everybody. My name is Leslie Bonci, and I am here with my partner, Roberta Anding. We are both registered dietitians, board certified specialists in sports dietetics, and co-founder of Performance 365, a sports nutrition consulting company in the United States. We bring a lot of experience. We bring the excellence. Hopefully, we bring the competence to what it is that we talk about in being able to translate those scientific recommendations into practical application with the evidence as a critically important component of it. And we're also not afraid to admit what we don't know. And the topic that we're talking about today is the effect of the microbiome on athletic performance. There's probably more unknowns than there are known at this point, but at the end of the day, what is it that we do know to help our athletes create a microbiome that gives them a healthy home? So with that being said, I'm going to turn the first question over to Roberta, and that is, how can the microbiome affect immune function?
Well, this is, as you said, a huge topic, and I'm going to say we're venturing into the brave unknown. And so the gut microbiome was first elucidated in the 1960s, and a lot of this was using a germ-free model and saying, if we used a germ-free mouse and looked at immune function, was there any downside? And the answer was yes. So when we think about immune function, I think all of us have heard there's 70% of your immune system is actually in your gut. And so if we look at the villi in your small intestine, like fingers on my hands, in between these crypts is something called gut-associated lymphoid tissue, and that is impacted by overall nutritional intake and nutritional status. So any disruption of the gut microbiome will influence the development and maintenance of this gut-associated lymphoid tissue. So what do we know? We know that severe energy restriction will impact immune health and increase the likelihood of infection. And so it can alter the ratio between CD4 and CD8 immune cells. And so significant energy restriction, you think, well, are athletes energy restricted? Clearly they can be if it's frank severe anorexia nervosa. But again, we don't want to forget our food insecure athletes, the individuals who, for whatever reason, parents lost a job, they don't have a full scholarship, they're struggling to pay their rent. They can also have a severe energy restriction that will impact immune health. We also know that there is an impairment of immune health when individuals are on a really low carbohydrate diet. And that is defined as less than 10% of calories from carbohydrate. And you think, well, who would do that? Well, clearly, if you're on a keto or paleo diet, you are carbohydrate deficient. So what is the etiology of that? Well, the thought is that since most of the healthy bacteria, the probiotics that live in our gut, need a carbohydrate source for fuel, whether it's fiber or other prebiotics in the diet, that when you restrict carbohydrate, you alter that bacteria's fuel source in a very significant way. This is further bolstered by the research suggesting that if you consume 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate during exercise, you prevent the suppression of T lymphocytes. So clearly there is a calorie impact here. Severe calorie restriction will give you a hit to your immune system, as well as a low carbohydrate diet. So I think we've all seen in an athletic population, as fad diets become more popular, we see that low carbohydrate diets are part of the etiology of immunosuppression.
And let me just add to that I think for athletes, they are not necessarily concerned about physiology, but it's not top of mind.
Correct.
And physique oftentimes takes precedence. Well, I want to have flat abs, therefore, or I don't want to be bloated, therefore, and not realizing the consequences of that elimination, not just on the health of the microbiome and a healthy immune system, but also potentially on performance as well. And so the other part of that question is, how can the microbiome affect the inflammatory response?
Well, it can in very meaningful ways, because again, if you're restricting your carbohydrate sources, you're also restricting the polyphenols that are going to be anti-inflammatories. And so you've got that. And I also think when we start to think about the inflammatory response, we can go back to the research and say, in individuals who have limited microbial diversity in their gut, limited number of species, it is now linked with inflammatory diseases such as inflammatory bowel disease, autoimmune diseases, MS, multiple sclerosis. So we can see this link between inflammation and the gut microbiome as well. So if we think about, when we talk about the gut microbiome, we have between 500 and 600 known species. So they're there for a reason, right? And so when our food sources become very narrow, our microbiota diversity also becomes narrow, and the implication for health and wellness is beyond the pale. It's really something that we all need to be thinking about. So when we translate all of this hardcore science into what individuals eat, we all say this all the time, make sure your plate has a wide variety of different foods. And this becomes a real central tenet in terms of supporting immune health and reducing the inflammatory response from within.
And so truly the idea of a healing plate, and that doesn't mean that it has to be cost prohibitive. It does mean you eat within your means, but if it's a very, very narrow circle, that's not going to do your body the best that it possibly can.
Oh, absolutely. And so with that being the case, what are your thoughts about the gut microbiome and energy balance?
Well, one of the things that we know is that we think about the microbiome. This is active, living, productive. And one of the roles of the microbiome is that it actually does contribute to the digestion and the absorption of nutrients so that we get more bang for the buck, so to speak, more out of the food that we are consuming. The other thing that happens is that those short chain fatty acids that are produced as a result of the fermentation of carbohydrates within the digestive tract also create another source of energy. And let's face it, we have a lot of athletes every single day who might be in energy deficit. Sometimes it is self-imposed. Sometimes it happens because exercise and movement outpaces intake. So anything that we can recommend that helps athletes get the most out of the calories that they consume each and every day is going to be extremely beneficial. And I think that that's also something that is very important for athletes to understand if they actually would buy into. Oh, here's the reason for me to think about some of the food that I consume because I'm going to get more out of them. It's like getting more out of a workout or anything else. More is a very, very positive word.
I would agree with that. And I'd also add that we can take a look at just the relationship between the gut-brain axis. And by having a diverse diet, do we actually have some ability to self-regulate in a different way, right? So as we talk about how do athletes regulate appetite, having that diversity has the potential to impact just the way that you respond to hunger and satiety cues. So we can take a look at some of the data coming from people with type 2 diabetes, that when you increase the microbial diversity, you actually can promote body fat loss. So I think there's on both sides of the coin. One, it can be an energy source, and two, there may be some nice communication between the gut and the brain that helps you to regulate food intake. So again, I think we're venturing into a really exciting area of nutrition, and we might even want to come up with a new name for this. Is it just the healthy bacteria from within? How do we fuel our inner heroes? But I do really think that this is going to be something that we're going to take a look at in years to come.
And truly, helping our athletes understand that eating is not just a neck down phenomenon. It really starts up here at the brain, and the gut is really the center of this, and doing things in terms of the foods that we choose and how it is we choose to eat them that support a healthy microbiome. It should be part of the dialogue that all of us have with our athletes, above and beyond the typical things that we might talk to them about.
Yep. And so in terms of performance strategies, do you have anything to put together that healing plate, Leslie?
So, a lot of people are throwing around probiotic as being very, very important. And I think it is critically important for people to understand that there are some things that truly are considered to be probiotics from the research and some maybe not so much. So kombucha might be in the category of not so much. It might be fun and bubbly and interesting, but it's not necessarily providing the same benefit. So we're looking at probiotic containing foods first and foremost, and we'll talk about supplements a little bit later. So if we look at cultured dairy foods, yogurt, looking at kefir, not only because they contain probiotics or the live active cultures, but also because they have protein in them, they have calories in them, they are readily available in lots of different places. We might find that kimchi for some athletes might love, others it might be a tougher sell. Sauerkraut or pickles aren't something that every athlete is eating all of the time, but if we can get them to do that, that's also vegetable. The other side of that is prebiotics, or those fermentable carbohydrates that actually feed the probiotics. So interestingly, one of the good sources of prebiotic is wheat. I mean, there's a lot of athletes that are saying no wheat. And granted, if somebody has a reason to eliminate it, that's fine. But that doesn't mean no grain, and it doesn't mean no carbohydrate. So it is still critically important to consume those foods. Bananas, which are a very easily, readily available food, also can be a source of prebiotic. Leeks and garlic, fine. We can eat those foods. They don't really pack a big calorie punch, but they are part of this total overall. Asparagus is another one. In addition to that, having enough fiber, and I know, Roberta, you're going to delve into that a little bit more, but these things are very much interrelated. I'll just do a probiotic and I eat no fiber. No. Or I'll just do a prebiotic, but I won't do what I need for a probiotic. No. It's all of these things together really create the team that we're looking at in terms of helping to optimize the health of the microbiome. And then certainly, Roberta, as you mentioned, and I can't say it enough, is not minimizing carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are your friend. They are critically important. And all of us really have to reiterate that, emphasize that with our athletes all the time, because they're hearing all those other messages out there about pasta, rice, potato, bread, cereal, no, and shouldn't eat. And not only may it be having a deleterious effect on their gut and the health of the microbiome and the diversity, but it also may be having a deleterious effect on performance. So one of the things that I mentioned was fiber. So realistically, Roberta, how can we get our athletes to buy in and try it when it comes to fiber without having a lot of unintended consequences?
Yes, well, certainly it's the timing of fiber, right? So having fiber right before an event, probably not the best strategy that you could have because of all the issues and changes in gut motility associated with exercise. But it could be by gradually, and I really do think that's the key word, gradually increasing the fiber content of your diet. So it could be by taking a really nice soluble fiber in oatmeal and adding a little bit of unprocessed wheat bran, which is very inexpensive, really very inexpensive, and adding that to the food. It could be by making a beef and bean burrito and having that as a protein extender, very inexpensive, great source of fiber. But again, it's gradually adding that fiber over time. Certainly, we all know whole fruits and vegetables are great sources of fiber, but you can't go from 0 to 60 because literally you're not going to leave your room. So one of when oftentimes athletes get this and they think, okay, fiber sounds like a really good idea. It nurtures my gut microbiome. Let me go from the traditional 10 grams of fiber that people eat to 60. And then they're not going to practice. They're not socially acceptable to be around, and they went too quickly. But adding that gradually over time in a cost-effective way becomes a very important consideration for all athletes. And again, when we start to take a look at fiber requirements, they're oftentimes listed as 14 grams per 1,000 calories. So again, if I need 5,000 calories a day, that's more fiber than most of us mere mortals are going to consume on a regular basis. So gradual introduction, realizing there's differences in fiber requirements, and going slowly. Slow and steady wins the race with this one, and not trying to increase it too quickly.
And I would add two other things. One would be, as you mentioned, the form. So for instance, we could eat a piece of fruit and that's a source of fiber, and a fruit is a finite portion. Whereas if somebody says, oh, I opened a box of high fiber crackers and I ate the whole thing, and then you're really going to feel uncomfortable because there's nothing in that box that is telling you that's enough and time out.
Right.
And the other critical component, the other F, one is fiber, the other is fluid. So
Right.
reminding our athletes that as they increase that fiber, they also want to make sure that they are compensating and balancing with enough liquid so that we don't create more issues in the GI tract.
Absolutely. So as we start to think about probiotic supplements, what are your thoughts on that, Leslie? Good, bad, or unknown?
Well, one of the things that, and we look at the potential if is and bad, is that a supplement is not a replacement for food. It is a complement to what one does with the diet. So as I mentioned, we'll say it again, is okay, I'm eating no carb whatsoever, but I'll take a probiotic supplement. That's useless in one end and out the other. Secondly, and this is kind of the area of the unknown, is there are lots of different strains of probiotics out there. They are continuing to be researched. We don't have all the answers right now about which particular strain is going to be the one that is going to create the greatest good across the board. And a lot of that also is contingent upon what somebody is doing with their eating. Third, price. And it can be prohibitive. And some things, like it's a high maintenance probiotic, you have to keep it refrigerated, you can't travel with it. If, ideally, if you want to do this, you're finding something that's shelf stable. So at least you take that out of the equation of money down the drain, or it becomes useless because it's rendered ineffective if you have it out of the refrigerator. And I also think that it's the probiotic is one component of it, right? It's pro and pre. It's both together, not either or. Some people actually will find a pro and prebiotic supplement, but realize, because the prebiotic is those fermentable carbohydrates, is that can sometimes create some gut issues. So, oh, let me try this new product before an event. Not a good idea. We don't want any unknown variable in the equation at that point in time.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point that oftentimes the probiotic supplements are single strain. And if we look at some of the really great research from Dr. Neil Walsh, he has actually shown a pretty good strength of evidence for athletes taking a multi-strain probiotic over a long period of time in terms of the support of immune health. Pretty good strength of evidence, actually better than vitamin C and some of the other things that we think about in terms of promoting optimum immune health. So I do think that multi-strain over a period of time is important, but we can get that multi-strain by altering our types of yogurt. So one yogurt may have one particular strain, you buy something else, and it's got something slightly different. And to your point, Leslie, which I think is so important, a good probiotic, in my experience, is about $40 a month, US dollars, $40 a month, and it may just be something athletes cannot afford to do. So get your multi-strain probiotic first and foremost from food. Make sure that you have something that's relatively high in fiber, diverse carbohydrate choices. And then I think you're really talking about not only protecting immune health, but clearly if athletes get sick, then it limits their ability to be out on the field or on the pitch or any type of competition that they're in. So again, I think making sure that when we look at this from a performance standpoint, having a diverse gut microbiome can improve performance in so much as the reduction of inflammation, as well as keeping athletes healthy and well over a period of time.
And again, that whole idea of healing plate, there's a lot of different moving parts. It is a team. It's not one individual player that's there. A probiotic is not a panacea. It's not just about fiber alone. It is really all of these things consistently and managing one's stress level and doing all the things that encourage proper hygiene. All of that is critically important to promote the best health for the athlete.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, lifestyle, we also know that athletes that are sleep deprived can also have immunosuppression. So the healing plate, understanding all the components of a healthy lifestyle, is how we promote a healthy gut microbiome, gut diversity, and optimum health and wellness for our athletes, not only in the field of play, but in terms of their overall protection against chronic disease.
Absolutely. Well, we have once again enjoyed spending time with you. And for more information, please be sure to check out the nutrium.com, look at those blogs, and thank you again.